Okay, here we are in the next tutorial. This one, well, Mrs. Diaz is back to grace us with her presence. In this file I've actually got a selection of images of Cameron, but just illustrating the various different retouching techniques. If I go back to the original file, that was her original image, and this was basically the skin softening done with the Gaussian blur. So that's Gaussian blur, skin softening, and this is using software called Perfect Portrait by On1 software. So it's fair enough, I've done a bit of color editing there too, but it's quite a remarkable difference, and it's quite quick and easy to use as well. In this one here I've just kind of used the liquify tool to bring in her cheeks a little bit, slim her down, make her a little bit less cheeky. But for the sake of this tutorial, I want to focus on the original here, and we're going to look at some of these pull down menus at the top here. If you want to check the size of the image, no matter where you get it from, you can go up to image pull down menu and you go image size, and it'll give you the resolution and the physical dimensions and the pixels. If you're doing a lot of web design or web based photos are needed, you'll generally use pixel sizes rather than your physical image sizes, document sizes. So inches versus millimeters, you can find out how big this file actually is, and you can adjust it accordingly. So should I not need it this size, maybe I only need it width of 30, I can then just type in 30 and it will resample it. If I hit enter, it will resize it for me to 30 millimeters. If I undo this and for example image size, I opened this image size and it was 70 pixels. I wanted to change it to 70 pixels for web use, or make it 72. For web use, this is a standard resolution for web pictures, very low resolution. Instead of reducing the whole image size, I just wanted to reduce the resolution size. By reducing the resolution size, it's actually going to change the image size as well, because you've got fewer pixels in that width. Let me just illustrate. Although it's still 2.4 inches, let's go 304. You see your pixel dimensions changes. 800 versus 190. So it makes a big difference to the actual physical size. Although your physical size doesn't say it's different here, it's a lot lower resolution. There's a lot fewer pixels in that area, so your image resolution is going to be terrible. So that's actually in theory how big it is. If I had to blow it up back to that physical size again, you can see its pixels are terrible. Conversely to that, you just Control Command 0 to fit it to picture again. If I go to image size and I want to resample, there's a little button here for resampling image. If I click it off, you'll see a little link, then links the actual document size to the resolution. So it will then change these three values proportionally. So if I switch that off, it's going to change them proportionally. As I say, 72 pixels here, it will actually increase the size there because it's taking those pixels and adding it onto the size. It's not destroying the pixels, it's just converting them. So it's like a balloon. If you squish it, the air inside of it just pushes out the side that you aren't squashing. So it's the same thing. As I squash this smaller here, it's going to squeeze this bigger here. So I can go OK, and you won't actually see a physical difference in the size of the image here. It's going to remain the same, because I haven't actually done anything. I've just resampled. I've shuffled the values around. So it's now low resolution, but it's a big low resolution image versus being low resolution small. So that's image sizes and resampling. We call this resampling when you link the two and you don't actually throw away any of the value or the information on that pixel, that image. You just shuffle around. That's called resampling. Okay, so we shuffle this back to 304. Hit enter and we are back to where we started. Okay, now the difference between image size and canvas size. Image size is how big my image is. As you can see, this is if I was to turn this off, this would be my canvas. The background layer would be my canvas. So although I have my image there, I want to make my canvas size bigger. I want to add, say, a border around. I can go to image, canvas size, and I can physically change the canvas size. It's not going to affect the image. So let's put it in millimeters so it's a language I can understand. And let's add 5 millimeters. Well, I want to add 5 millimeters to either side, so let's add 10 millimeters. So we'll say 72 by 76. Okay, so it's adding 5 mils to each side. This little illustration here is telling you where those extra measurements are going to be added onto the canvas. If I click down here, it's going to add them on to this top and right area here. So it's going to have basically 10 millimeters of white space out this side versus 10 millimeters of space out this side here and below. So beneath and the left. So if I click in the middle, it's going to add it equally all around it, and that's what I want. I'm happy with that. The canvas extension color is going to be red currently because it's the background color there. Do I want that? No, I want white, so I can switch that to white. So you can either have it representative of the color swatches that are selected here, or you can choose black or white, your own or another here. Other, if I go there, it'll let me choose a specific color that I want here as I choose that value. So I can go white, and I say OK, and it'll add canvas to that area there. It doesn't change the image size. Because my image isn't on the background, it's still free to move around. I haven't damaged it in any way, so it's a way of adding canvas size. You can often do that as well if you're wanting to increase your image size. Like I said, you can either add canvas size by physically going image canvas size and adding in specific values, or you can use the crop tool. C is a shortcut, C for cat, and you can click and drag, and if you drag it outside of the bounds, it's on the side of the canvas right now, but if I drag it outside of those bounds, it's going to increase the size of the canvas as well. But likely it's going to put in the background color, so if I hit enter, it's going to put in red there, most likely. Correct. Okay, so there's two ways of increasing your canvas size, either by the menu or using the crop tool, but just remember to set your colors here. If you wanted a white background there, then I should have rather put white before I use the crop tool. Okay, on to other image values. I want to adjust her face, but I'm not exactly sure. I'm not too clued up on color, so I don't know, do I put more red in it? Do I put more green? Do I put more blue? I actually don't know what to do. So Photoshop's got a wonderful little automatic tool here. If you go into image and you say auto color, it'll do its best to match that color to what it should be. So if I say auto color, let's see what it does. Okay, so it's made it very cool. Okay, so it's a good start to even up a picture. I found if a picture is really badly off color, got a bad cast to it, then I generally use the auto to get started, and then I fine tune it from there. Like I showed in the earlier ones, you can always use a photo filter down here in the adjustment layer. The photo filter, in this case, it looks a bit cool. I want to warm it up a bit, so you can use a warming filter and just increase that a bit in there. So before and after the warming filter, you can warm it up a little bit if you want to, but the color is looking a bit flat, so maybe you want to adjust the contrast as well. So we can do auto contrast. Make sure that it's on the layer that you want. So you select the original layer and say auto contrast, and hopefully this will give us a bit more contrast to the picture. Hasn't seemed to have made too much of a difference there. As far as editing goes here, so let's go back into here and we can try the auto tone, and let's lighten it up a bit. Okay, so using the auto function, let's turn off the color adjustments. It hasn't done a bad job. If I go back in the history and look at what it looked like before the auto color, that's not too bad actually. So if you don't know what you're doing, you can use all the auto settings. It'll give you a pretty nice representation. It's a little pink, but nothing a photo filter or two couldn't sort out. Let's bring in a bit of yellow again. Now with the tonal adjustments, it's made it a bit warmer, so we can bring this down a bit. Okay, so that's a quick and dirty way of getting a rough, accurate color adjustment done on your picture. Image rotation. In the case where you're shooting with your camera and you haven't got auto rotate set on your camera in the camera settings, if you bring your camera in and it's lying on its head, let me rotate this for you, 90 degrees clockwise, it's actually turning the whole page pretty much, not just the picture. If I took this and I selected the original and I did a transform on it, I grabbed the corner and rotated that. If I hold the shift button in, it'll lock it to, you can see how it jumps to a square, so it locks it to like 45 degree or 30 degree angles. So your shift button, once again the transform tool, will keep it square. So I can do that, and I can rotate that the right way around, but everything else in here is still facing with its head to the right because the actual canvas has been rotated, not the image. So if I undo this transform, and when I open my picture, because I shot it maybe portrait, holding my camera up with the right hand side to the top of the frame, it's now, when it comes in, the top of the frame will now be on the right hand side. So this is basically what you'd use your rotation tool for, counterclockwise. So it's 90 degrees clockwise, 90 degrees counterclockwise, and you can set arbitrary, basically you can set a specific 14 degrees or 15 degrees, however much you want to do. You can also flip your canvas, which is quite handy if you want to make your face the same on both sides. You can make a selection, or if your picture for some odd reason is facing the wrong direction, you can turn around. It's similar to the transform tool, you've got the same function. If I copy that, select this layer, I say Command or Control C, Control V for Vicky to paste, and I select my item tool, transform, Control T. I can right click in my transform. While I've got my transform box, I can right click in it, it'll give me some options for that transform tool. So I can go to my warp here as well, or I can rotate it whichever way I scale it. Here I want to flip it horizontal from left to right, vertical being from top to bottom. So I'm going to flip it horizontal, and I can then drag it this way, holding the shift key in, keep it there. And as they say, if your face was the same on both sides, you'd look funny. So it's true, no one's got a perfect face. Okay, so that's just a flip tool. The same would apply. Let me undo this a bit here. Poor camera, she's having a hard time. I can take this and I can say flip horizontal, and it'll flip the whole canvas. So from left to right. So now it's a mirror image basically. You know, it has its place, I guess, and don't necessarily need it for this application. Okay, duplicate, that's all pretty much what you can do down here as well. You can duplicate that layer. Oh, sorry, duplicate the image, so it'll create a new image of this. So it's handy if you've got an original image that you don't want to hurt. For myself personally, I would rather just grab the original image here, drag it onto that little new layer, and make a copy there, turn off the original, and work on that, instead of making a whole new document. But that has this place too, so you can create a whole new document using duplicate. These others I haven't actually used. Apply image calculations, haven't used. The next, I'm sure you've seen me use this one already, is the mode. You can convert to grayscale, RGB, index, lab. This index, lab, and multi-channel aren't colors that you often use. As I mentioned, the bit rate, how big or how much data is in that area, that space, how many bits per inch. Yeah, that's why it's, as far as your color breakdowns go, RGB versus CMYK, you can see your channels here. So if you want to view it in red only, just select the red channel, and that's all the red items there, green and blue. So maybe if you're doing your black and white conversion, you could use one of these channels to get an idea of which colors you'd be affecting when you make your selective color adjustments in black and white. If you're in CMYK mode, you'd have CMYK breakdown here, cyan, magenta, yellow and black, which allow you to do modifications to specific channels rather than doing it to all three. I can go back to my layers here with just the one channel selected, and I can do an adjustment on here. So if I do a levels, sorry, shortcut of that is Control L or Command L, and I can then darken this layer. Okay, I think that's a nice grayscale, but the only thing is I'm not working in grayscale, I'm working in RGB, and I've only affected the red. So 10 to 1, this is going to have a drastic outcome on that, on the RGB version. So you can see how adding red in the shadows is giving it more of a blue cast. Always remember your opposites. Red affects blue, and green affects yellow, etc, etc. So you've got to jump between us. It takes a bit of thinking in RGB. You don't just, if you're adjusting red, you aren't actually adjusting the reds, you're making it either more red or more blue. So it's something to think about. Okay, so when you want to select and edit all colors, you then select the RGB layer again, which will select all three below it. So the RGB lets you select all the layers together. Layers, this is basically everything you have here is pretty much available here. If you remember, we use the smart objects, you can convert to smart object here as well. Layer styles, we double clicked here as a shortcut. It'll open the layer style for drop shadows and that kind of thing. You can delete layers, duplicate layers. So this is all just your layer storage. You can send to back or send to front, which will move it up and down. Selection, this is basically your selection tool, got to do with selections. So deselect, reselect, invert your selections. You can grow your selection. So for example, I drag select and I've selected too little. I can go to select and I can say grow, it will expand it slightly. Okay, which is not ideal. The better option to do to change your selection is to expand rather. If you go to modify and select modify, you say expand, you can tell it exactly how many pixels you want to expand it by. So I can make it 5 pixels bigger, it'll then expand that block bigger. Same applies for contract, you can make it smaller. Feather, we've used feather once before when we created the action for a frame. It gives it a soft edge, your selection. Border, we use that for the frame as well. It actually creates a border around that selection, so you sorted. Okay, so those are your selection options. Similar layers, color range. You can select specific colors in a certain range. Let me just deselect, Control D, Command D. Color range. It brings up this fuzziness story as you make a selection here. It's selecting that color that I select, and this fuzziness adjusts the threshold basically. So how many variations of that color. So say I want to select all that, I can say it's fine, it'll actually make a selection of that. So there's the selection. I can now edit that color range. I can either replace the color, or if I go to adjustments, replace color, I can then just replace that only. Just the hue. So yeah, I can do whatever I choose to do on it. Might be a nice effect with a bit of black and white in there or something, who knows. Okay, so then you've got all your filters. These, I'm not going to go through every single one of them. They pretty much are what they say they are. Motion blur, that, you know what that is. There's different effects you can add. Once again, most of these are only available in RGB mode. Yeah, I'll just do one of them. Charcoal sketch, so it's to make your image look like a bit of a sketch. You can do a charcoal chalk drawing. It'll bring up another window. It'll ask you for how concentrated you want it, which areas you want. Chalk versus charcoal. Let's stroke pressure, how thick those strokes are going to be, or how dense. And I'll just say okay, it's actually going to render that as that chalk drawing, so you can get some pretty artistic effects to it. All these effects here. These ones here aren't a part of Photoshop, it's a plugin that I got for removing green screen. Yeah, Liquify is part of your manipulation. We've gone through Liquify already. 3D we won't cover because there's not much we're going to do with regards to 3D work. And view, this is just looking at your rulers. These are your rulers here. If you want to put guards in, I can switch my rulers on or off. Shortcut for that is Command or Control R. I can click on my ruler and drag a guide. Click and drag, and you'll see a little line up here, so you can make a guide to line things up with from both left or right. You can put as many guides in as you want. To remove it, you just move your item cursor back over that guide, and you'll see it'll change into like a parallel lines. You grab it and drag it back into the ruler and release, and it removes the guide. Alternatively, I believe you can now select it and delete. Nope, wrong application. Okay, so drag and move it, so it's quite handy. Once you've got guides there, you can see how it snaps to that point. It just jumps to the edge of that window. So I've got this layer selected, so it'll jump to the edge of that. Conversely, if I've got this selected, I can say to it view, and I can say snap. I'm going to snap the guides or snap two guides. If I take that off, I can move this around. You'll see the guides won't make a difference to it. It doesn't jump onto the edge of the guide there. I can accidentally put it there. But if I say to it now, snap two guides, it's actually going to use the guides as the spot to fit to. See how it jumps to that spot. So it's a lot easier to fit it to a guide when it's snap two guides to jump onto that spot. It'll help you with positioning. So it's view, it's guides, and snap to, which relate to your rulers and your guides. You can switch your guides on or off, so even though they're there, you can show different elements, show guides, turn them off, and they're still there but they're hidden. So you can go back to view, show guides, and you can see various other things. You can put a grid, one here, two, and in the preferences you can set the spacing between the grid. If you want to do sketches or something, you divide the image up into segments. I've never really used the grid myself. Yeah, all sorts of elements can display. So put a little blue mark around that layer's edges, so you know where it starts and finishes. Window, as I mentioned, this is just all your palettes where you can find things. And in the help, if you're online, you can go to your help here and type in a search. If you can't find a tool, you type it in here. Say you want to image adjustments, image adjustments, or let's see. Well, let's go and see. You don't know what you're looking for. It's got something to do with the image. You remember it's got something to do with an image. Come on. Okay, as you type it in here, it'll bring up clues. And if you scroll down to the one you think it could be, it'll give you pointers. So as I scroll here, it tells me where to find it. So it's showing me where all these different image things are. So I can flatten the image. So if you're lost, just come here to the help menu, type in the search here, and it'll give you pointers to what you might be talking about. And you can, oh, that's where I found it. And you can go down to that menu then and go and select what you're looking for. That's about a handy tool there under the help menu. Okay, nothing else really here. It'll update itself. It's all just regards to the maintenance of it. And the last thing I would like to just show you quickly out of the menus, it's a rather new development in the Adobe CS suite, or in Photoshop at least. When it first came out, everyone raved about it. It was fantastic. It was the best thing since sliced bread, and it is a wonderful concept. But some of the quick fixes in Photoshop do have their drawbacks. And just as much as I was talking about the Magic Wand tool, making a quick and dirty selection is nice, but it leaves a very jagged edge. It's not a very clean tool. Likewise, I'm just going to create this, put this picture on a layer. So I'm going to double click this layer, and it'll then convert it from background to a layer. I'm going to use a transform tool. Now we all know a transform tool. This is a perfect example of an image that you might want to resize because you don't want to crop any part of it off. It's a panoramic image, so it's longer than the standard size image. So if I were to print this, it would either fit it to a 6x4, for example, and have white out of the top of it, because you'd fit left and right to the 6-inch side, and then the 4-inch side would be short, so you'd have white top and bottom, which wouldn't really work so well. So maybe you want to fill this in the 6x4 area, but without having to cut everything off. So if you were to just drag this selection to fit into a 6x4 area, just hypothetically speaking like that, you can notice that it's distorted. It wouldn't really work trying to squeeze this into a 6x4 area. So what Photoshop did, let me just escape this. Photoshop's created a wonderful tool called Content Aware. You can use it in both filling stuff and or enclosing areas out, and you can also use it for scaling elements. So if I go up to my edit menu and I go to Content Aware Scale, so your normal transform tool is over here, free transform. You can transform and scale it and skew it and work with your perspective, depending on which of these things. Just as an added note, I've been speaking about the transform tool a lot. If you right click in your transform tool, it will give you these other options. All these other options here will be available inside your transform tool. So if I right click in here, it'll then let me swap this tool into different uses. So in the warp tool, it'll then break it up into different pieces, and I can affect this image in separate elements, just separating it and doing more specific things to specific areas. So that's what the warp tool would do. If I just want to escape out of this, I'll go back into transform by Control or Command T, right click. I can then go and use perspective. Perspective is quite handy if you want to correct, if you're shooting a building, so you're looking up at a building, you normally get your building your lines of your building are very angled up towards like a pyramid almost, so you want to straighten that out again. So you use your perspective option of your transform tool and drag your corners out. As I drag this corner, it's going to take out the opposite corner as well. So you can see it's then correcting the perspective on your image. So you can use this tool to correct perspective, and if I pull it vertically, it's going to pull out the bottom corner. So you can correct your perspective just by pulling your angle any way you want. You can also skew it, and by catching your center points here, you can then bend your image left or right, skew it. So you're quite versatile in what you can do with your transform tool. Distorting will just break it away. One element, the same as what I showed you. If you hold down your control key when you're in the free transform, holding down your command or your control key will do the same thing as skew. So there are shortcuts to the same effect as distort, not skew. So there are different shortcuts to creating these effects as well. Flipping horizontal is literally what it's going to do. It's going to flip your image horizontal, flip it vertical. So that's all your transform key. I'm going to escape this, so it's not going to set the transform. And I'm going to go back to talking about transforming or scaling it without squashing it. So I use Content Aware Scale, and what it's going to do is going to look at this picture and look at stuff that shouldn't be compressed and try and preserve that piece of the image, while it's going to take other pieces that seem less relevant, like this piece of sky here and this land. It's relatively the same all through it here, so it'll use a lot of that and compress that to compensate for areas which shouldn't be compressed. So as I drag it, you'll see the line will maintain its shape. Nothing's really changing too much. It's adjusted the hindquarter of the line a little bit, but if I set that as a transform, I'm going to go back out and do the free transform and just show you the visible difference between the two. Okay, so I'm going to copy this layer, selecting it all, copy, and I'm going to go back in my history and undo that scale, and I'm going to paste that onto a separate layer here. So there's the example of the Content Aware Scale. I'm going to retransform this now in the same way, just using the standard transform tool. I'm going to drag it back in here again, more or less the same transformation that I used. So there we go, transformed. If I bring this one back on, you can see the difference on the layer. Select this layer. See the difference in the content aware scale versus the free transform scaling. So it really does a good job in preserving that. The only drawback on this though, if I zoom in on this picture now, you can actually see where it's struggled to make a change. So it's actually messed up a bit here on the back of the line and trying to drag it in. Same here with the mountain. So if you use a content aware scale, just be aware that you will need to go in and probably clean up certain artifacts in the clouds where it's squashed things together and try to patch it in together. The joining at times, it doesn't always do a good job of that. So that's the one drawback of content aware scale. It can do a good job of compressing, but just be aware that it does create funny artifacts throughout your image. You just got to go through it and try and iron that out. Okay, let's go back to the beginning of this image. The other part of content aware scale that you can use is the cloning aspect of it. With the background, or with it being on a background, if you delete an area, it's going to automatically ask you what you want to fill it with. So I want to take out this wording here. I'm going to use the lasso tool to just drag around this wording here and finish it off. I'm going to go up here and I say, well, I can just hit the delete button. So with that selected on my background, I can say delete. It's going to ask me what I want to fill it with, white, foreground, background, color, or you can use content aware. So it's going to look around what's surrounding those selected pixels and try and fill the content with what's surrounding it. So I say content aware, I go OK, and it's going to do its best job to fill that in with something that looks more realistic. So it's a quick way of filling in. I mean, if you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't notice it. So it's done a pretty good job of filling that in automatically. Okay, if this was on, let me just undo this again, if this was on a layer, and I made that same selection again, and I said delete, it would actually just make a hole in the layer. So that's not going to work this way around. So if I undo that, in order to apply a content aware fill now, I'd have to go up here to edit, and I'd have to say edit fill, and from here I can then choose the foreground, background, color, or content aware. So I can use my content aware here via fill when it's on a layer. So I can say OK, and it will do the same function as what it was when it was in the background. So that's just a very useful feature that Photoshop has got now. I think it's from around CS4 they introduced that content aware fill and scaling, which would be a valuable menu to use. So it's in your edit menu, and it is down here. Puppet warp. It's also quite intricate, which allows you to set points and distort items. So if you have a model of a person and they aren't posed correctly, you can use puppet warp to then go in and set. It's going to be quite a big. So you can set points by selecting certain points that you would like to have move. So it's basically like putting joints into an item. So I can put these joints in here, and then using these joints as a reference, you can then move your image and distort your image, and it will distort on those points rather than. So it's kind of like doing a warp in the transform, but it's more selective, because I can just distort that point there. So I can change someone's arm and turn it around, lift it up, put it down. You can actually do really specific warping using the puppet warp over doing the normal transform and using the warp option in the transform. Okay, so those are two relatively new features that are really useful in doing modifications in your documents.